Alright boys, so a while ago I told y'all that whenever we have downtime in FGO, there's just not a whole lot of hype stuff really going on, kind of like right now, Scramble is winding down and we're still waiting for the Fairy Lotto event to start. I told you guys that I would start a series about all of the low rarity servants in the game, and well, today is that day. Starting off with our boy Caesar, I am going to start covering every single 3, 2, and 1 star servant in the game, and I guess Angraminu, although that video is going to be a little bit awkward. Low star legend Angraminu. I might just have to put like a thumbs down on that video or something. But towards the end of each of these videos, after I cover each of the servants, I'm going to give you guys a rating of gold, silver, or bronze. So that way, if you are a newer player and you watch one of these videos, if they have a gold rating, you're like, dang, that is a free-to-play servant that I need to level up right now. And if they get the bronze rating, well, you're like, they're probably kind of dookie. I could probably just avoid leveling up that guy right now. Now, why are we starting with Caesar? Well, he's just the first one on the Saber tab. I was trying to think of some arbitrary way to decide the order of the servants that I covered, but I was like, you know what, let me just go see who the first, low rarity Saber is, and boom, it was Caesar. So we're starting off with Caesar. Naturally, that means the next video is going to be Guile's Saber, so we'll actually see how that one goes. But before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content. Always striving to do better and better. And look at this, we got a new series coming in that I'm pretty excited for. If you want to see me play FGO live, I do that every weekday over on my Twitch starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Although there's some days where we have some problems and we start a little bit later. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into the servant, starting off with Caesar. Now, here's going to be kind of a common issue you'll see with a lot of the early servants. They have very, very low hits. You might see that 1.1% NP gain per attack and be like, oh my goodness, your eyes are bulging out of your head. You're like, this guy is going to be absolutely insane. Well, it doesn't really matter if your NP gain or your star gen, even for that matter, are really high if your hits are just extremely low, because you don't have the hits to actually take advantage of how high your natural stats are. Now, his NP is pretty good. The hits on his NP are 10, so he can actually make use of something like that, but his natural cards are going to lead him to struggle just a bit when it comes to genning his NP. You can get lucky with an arts crit and gen a decent amount of NP, and if you've got enough quick buffs going, like let's say you're using double Scotty or even double ruler Scotty to really buff up that quick performance, you can get some semi-decent looking NP gain and NP refund from his quick cards. But really, a lot of these very old servants, it seems how they're being built right now from, well, when DW was in charge, is that they kind of just focused on making their NPs really, really good and not really fixing up their kit a whole lot. That's not true of all old servants, but if you think about a lot of the year 1 3-star servants, nowadays, it's pretty much like they have a really, really strong NP, and you're kind of just trying to rush to get that, and Caesar is no different. Now, he can do some nice crits with his kit, but as we'll get into in just a second, his kit is very, very limited. I'm actually just going to cover skill 1 and skill 2 together, because nowadays, these two skills would be rolled into one ball. So, skill 1 is giving him 18% NP damage for 1 turn on a 5-turn cooldown. It also does buff the party's NP damage, but unless you're specifically using like Ruler Scotty, who has a damaging NP, it's really not going to be all that relevant. And then his second skill is kind of a decent charisma, at least for him being so old. It's 16% attack for the entire party for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. These buffs together are pretty nice because they do allow Caesar to double buff himself. If you're not aware, different buff types in FGO actually multiply into each other, so despite him being such an old servant, he can actually put out some really good damage numbers while his first skill is active, because that NP damage buff is multiplying into that attack buff on skill 2, especially if you have, again, someone like Scotty giving him a quick buff, which is a 3rd buff that he has going for him, and that can really help him start ramping up some damage. But realistically, his damage does fall quite a bit whenever you lose that first skill. Can still do some decent damage because he has an upgraded NP, and people like Scotty are really carrying the load with like the 50% quick buffs they give, the defense down, or the attack buff that Ruler Scotty gives, plus the additional 30% quick with double Ruler Scotty instead of normal Scotty, so that can definitely help him out a lot. But it seems they put a lot of the effort into Caesar's 3rd skill, which originally wasn't all that great. I mean, it gave an ally a 40% crit damage buff for 3 turns, but also lowered their defense by 20% for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. It was a little bit iffy, but instead, now they also attached a 100% star gen buff onto this skill for 3 turns, basically meaning that whenever you have this up and you target it on Caesar, and he has that 10 pit NP that I was talking about, you're going to be able to bomb a lot of stars. God forbid you do it in a quick chain, especially on the JP version, where they just buffed how good quick chains are. Granted, the 20% reduction in defense still isn't all that great. It's still a little annoying because it makes your servants basically take a fifth more damage. But that 40% crit damage buff is still nice. But again, if you're using him with Scotty, you want to focus on doing quick crits. This kind of allows him to just have a little bit of flexibility though. Then, although if you're using Ruler Scotty, you can also do Buster crits because he does have a double Buster, double quick deck. But really, even this buff skill really isn't the main thing you're going for. The NP is pretty much the pride and joy of Caesar over here, because this is where things get a little bit crazy. So he gives himself an increased buff success rate, and then as long as each successive buff goes through, this man can get up to like a 50% attack buff before he even fires his NP. And this is actually why, despite him being so old, he can actually do a really good amount of damage, because that's a pretty massive attack buff that, again, if you have that first skill up, is multiplying into that NP damage skill. And you'll see somewhere right here where like the chart is coming up for the NP damage, that if he is able to successfully get that maxed out buff, he is like the hardest hitting single target quick saber in the game, as long as Okita doesn't get at least 2 of her attack buffs. But still, that is quite good for him, because again, this is a year 1 single target quick servant, and think about how highly everybody holds someone like Okita in regard. I mean, I hold her in really high regard as a very, very strong single target quick servant in general, and this guy can at least drop bombs bigger than hers. And even if he's not able to do that, even if he whiffs out on that, he's doing comparable damage to DR Mood and doing more damage than Frankenstein Saber. So he is still competitive even if you do whiff those. And as a newer player, with this guy being a 3-star, he is very, very solid, because you could pretty much just bring him into even neutral fights and have him just nuke enemies into the ground. He will do a massive amount of damage. God forbid you bring him up against enemies that he has type advantage against, you know, any Lancers or Berserkers or something along those lines. He's going to absolutely crush them. And that's why it might be very surprising for you guys to hear me say that I'm going to give him a silver star. Now, the reason I'm actually doing that is for his problems in actually getting to his NP. If all of the buffs go down, he's going to be very, very hard pressed to actually get to his NP. Granted, you have people like Scotty and Ruler Scotty that literally pump NP into him, but there are other low rarity servants that I'm also trying to consider in the future that are definitely going to get that gold rating. And with those characters in mind, I can't in good conscience put him up there, but he would be like a very solid silver rating, a servant that I definitely recommend a lot of new players to level up. Because one of the really weird things about the Saber class is that a lot of them are just really high rarity. I noticed this when I was first starting FGO on like my personal account. I noticed that like if you wanted any decent Saber, they're all like 4 stars and above. Your options when it comes to free-to-play Sabers is very, very limited. Your counter kind of offer for Caesar is going to be Bedivere, but unfortunately Bedivere is story locked, and so for a lot of people he's going to be stuck at NP1, which is why again I recommend that you level up Caesar. This guy definitely does put in work, and I cannot recommend him enough. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Am I not giving him a high enough ranking? Do you think maybe he should have gotten that gold star? I don't think so. I think we can all agree that in the grand scheme of things, if we're considering every single 3-star and below servant, he should probably get a silver star. And keep in mind, if this was like a tier list, these tiers would be absolutely massive. But I'm sure by the end of it, someone's going to be like, well, Caesar's in the same tier as like blah, blah, blah character. And just know that in general, if they're like a gold star servant, they're like a free-to-play servant that pretty much even pay-to-play players are probably going to use. Silver is just like a really solid option that everybody should probably level up, but you'll probably grow out of. And then bronze is like, you're super desperate. You just need a guy on the team, and they might not even necessarily be good. But again, I'm trying to kind of like feel out this series and kind of see how I want to do things. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments down below. And if we don't get any crazy news in the next day or so, then it looks like the next video is going to be Guile's Saber, which, yeah, let me just go ahead and end the video there before I have to think about that one anymore. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late, guys.